now's a time when things are shifting. There's going to be a new world order out there, and we've got to lead it.
The following program is brought to you by friends and partners of End Time Headlines.
What's going on, everyone? This is End Time Headlines, and we welcome you to tonight's broadcast. It is Tuesday, October 18th, and we thank you guys for coming on today for this special broadcast. We've got an interesting report coming out of the Middle East. We've got several stories that we want to cover tonight that we believe has prophetic significance, not so much maybe in the short term, but definitely in the long term. This first story comes out of Israel Today, who's reporting that a recent interview on Israeli radio featured prominent rabbis explaining that the quote Messiah is about to reveal himself. Now, we've talked about this for quite some time here, and we've told you that these prominent rabbis have been saying this for years, but now yet another report has come out where a Rabbi Yaakov Zhushkultz told Religious Broadcast Radio 2000 that another rabbi by the name of Chaim Konvinsky, who recently passed away earlier this year, told him that Konvinsky was already in direct contact with the quote Messiah. Now we'll elaborate a little bit more on this. I want to read this to he went on to say that or the report went on to say that Rabbi Chaim was considered one of the 2 or 3 top rabbis of the ultra-Orthodox Jewish community in Israel. And the report stated that Konvinsky and others of the mystical concealed rabbis had tasked him with informing the public of the quote Messiah's imminent arrival. I'm not going to read all this for sake of time, but he went on further to say that the quote process of redemption is about to begin, and it's happening very quickly and at a fast pace. Quote, getting the word out now that the Messiah is closer than ever is a matter of life and death. Quote, haven't you heard of Gog and Magog? That is what is going to happen very soon. He went on to reiterate a number of signs of which prominent rabbis have taken note and that they firmly believe to be evidence of the coming of the Messiah. Rabbi Kook, who is another rabbi, responded that when the Messiah arrives, the Sea of Galilee will be full. And in a few weeks, now this was reported back at the end of September, the Sea of Galilee will be full for the first time since Rabbi Kook made this statement. So again, let's recap, and then I'll give you a little bit of insight, my personal opinion on this. Again, prominent rabbis are saying that the Messiah, and I use quotations, the Messiah is about to reveal himself in Israel. And one rabbi, who has since already passed away, had claimed that he had been in direct contact with the Messiah himself. Now, is this the Messiah? Is this the Mashiach, the Messiah, the Son of God, the Son of David, Jesus Christ, who in the Bible revealed himself as the Messiah, told us he was the Messiah? Is this the same Messiah that these rabbis claim is about to make his imminent revealing, his imminent return, his appearance? Is this the same Messiah that was already in direct contact with one of these prominent rabbis? Based upon the word of Almighty God, I am going to go ahead and tell you no. Now, why is that? Because I don't believe, first of all, that the Messiah is going to reveal himself directly to a rabbi in Israel. Jesus said, listen, your word says that, again, no man knows the day nor the hour, not even the Son himself, not the angels, but the Father only. Now, if he's not going to reveal it to Jesus himself, who is the Messiah, the real Messiah, and he's not going to let the angels in heaven know, why would he be speaking directly to a mystic rabbi in Israel who probably doesn't even have a personal relationship with Yeshua? He is probably not born again. He is probably not a Messianic Jew. And that opens the door for the next part of what I want to tell you, and what I've continually told you and warned you, that prophetically speaking, this is all setting the stage for the appearance and the arrival of the Antichrist, who, again, Revelation 11, Thessalonians, the book of Daniel, all tell us he will appear and make his appearance in Israel, in Jerusalem, and he will set up his headquarters in the temple that will be rebuilt. Revelation 11, the third temple that we've been discussing more and more and more on these programs that we've done throughout the years. Now, having said that, speaking of that, there was another report in which out of Israel, they said that 600 Levites in Israel just performed a rehearsal for the coming third temple. This was a report from Israel 365 News that said last Thursday night, over 600 Jewish men from the tribe of Levi held a rehearsal on the steps leading up to the, quote, Temple Mount to prepare to play their role in providing the musical accompaniment for the third temple service that will initiate, again, in the end time, the rebuilding or the building or the construction of this third temple, Revelation 11. Now, this is the second report that's come out recently. Now, the other one was the 5 red heifers. Remember that story? We talked about that. We reported that. We reported on that here on End Time Headlines, where they got these heifers out of the state of Texas in the United States of America, and they shipped them over to Israel. These were 5 red heifers that were handpicked. They were not scarred. They were not flawed. They were not tainted. They were very young. And they would have to go through a process in which they would be raised, and they would be monitored by those individuals, probably those of the Jewish Sanhedrin, those of the Temple Institute, and those in direct involvement for this process. So if these calves, these heifers, if they pass the qualifications that are needed and that are met, then they will be readily available for the dedication, for the sacrifice of the third temple in Jerusalem. And now we have 600 men from the tribe of Levi. Now listen, don't ask me how they know that all these men are from the tribe of Levi. Probably a DNA test. I'm sure, listen, Israel's got advanced technology, especially in as far as the medical field, that surpasses most countries out there. I mean, it's just the truth. They have the technology available. They have the resources available. They have some of the top doctors. They have done these DNA sequences and these tests and all these things that they've done. They have procedures that they have performed there that's brought success to healing of certain cancers and diseases, and has not even ever come to light of day here in America. Now, I wonder why that is. It wouldn't have anything to do with bureaucracy and government regulations and money and pharmaceuticals. And anyway, well, that's a whole other message for another day. But the point I'm making is steps are being done that is preparing us, not so much for the short term, but in the long term. Because remember, we talked about this as far as the temple goes, there has to be all these rituals and these procedures and the sequence of events, and everything has to be done in order and exactly to the T in order for them to bring about this revealing of this third temple. There has to be the instruments used, the articles of the furniture, the fabrics, the red heifers, the Levites. They have to have the certain men to perform these, the priest. All this stuff's got to be in order. And the Temple Institute and all these organizations, they've been doing this for years and years and years. And now we are on the very precipice of seeing this fulfilled in our lifetime. Now, I got into a conversation a while back with an individual one-on-one, and we kind of talked about this off the cuff. It wasn't on the mic, or it wasn't documented or recorded on a podcast or anything. And we got in this conversation. He asked me, how long do you think that it would take to actually construct this temple or build this temple? And I said, I believe that they could do this in probably 6 months. Easily, because they have the resources, they have the manpower, they have all this. That's not what they're waiting on. They're not waiting on manpower or people to help them or resources or the material. They're not waiting on all this, guys. They are waiting again to have everything in place, so that only thing they got to do is build the temple and fulfill this. Now, before I want to close, not this entire podcast, but on this particular segment. Before we do that, though, there was something else that happened that directly involves the Temple Mount this week. I don't know if you saw this, but Michael Snyder reported on this. I saw this from other reports as well, but we're just going to use his website, themostimportantnews.com. He did a piece on this, so I'm going to go with this because I liked how he worded this. Quote, whenever something unusual happens on the Temple Mount, we should pay attention. And it appears that something extremely unusual may have just taken place there. On the morning of October the 16th, which was just a few days ago, which also happened to be the 7th day of the Feast of Tabernacles. Now, I want to interject this. Snyder did not put this in there, but I will interject this. Not only is it something that we should be paying attention to if it's supernatural or if it's an anomaly or something like that in origin because it's in the Temple Mount, but the fact that it happened on a feast day or in that time frame is very intriguing. But nevertheless, according to the report, on the 16th of October, on the 7th day of the Feast of Tabernacles, at the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, a bright white anomaly was seen hovering over an open area in front of the Dome of the Rock. Video footage of this anomaly was captured by a man that lives on the temple that lives on the Mount of Olives, named Josh Wander. I believe that's how you say that, Wander. Since he actually lives there, Wander is very similar with the Temple Mount, and he says that he has never seen anything like this before. Quote, I've watched Wander's video several times now, and I don't personally know what this is. Hopefully someone else captured video of this anomaly from another angle. And if anyone out there is able to find such a video, so this is Snyder saying, please send it to me so that he can verify or he could get a confirmation of what just this is. So he says, did we just witness some sort of supernatural sign of the Temple Mount? And if so, what does this mean? So when I was reading this report, it definitely made me think of something. And it immediately reminded me all the way back to the time of Josephus the historian, which was an eyewitness to the destruction of the temple in 70 AD. And in his writings, and you can find this, and I believe it's in the Antiquities of the Jews or War of the Jews. These are books that he compiled where he wrote about historical events that he eyewitnessed during the Roman invasion of destruction of the temple in 70 AD. According to Josephus's writings, he talked about there was a sequence of supernatural events that took place in Jerusalem, in Israel, and some of these involved the Temple Mount directly. For example, during the Feast of Unleavened Bread in 66 AD, 4 years prior to the destruction of the temple, at about 3 a.m. in the morning, a light as bright as daylight appeared around the altar for a half an hour. Now, again, this is in the temple. Although some thought it was a good sign, many of the scribes understood it to be a precursor to the supernatural events that followed during the feast. A heifer, and we just talked about that, being led for sacrifice, was said to have given birth to a lamb in the midst of the temple. Guys, that's impossible, but it happened according to not only Josephus, but other historical writers who was alive during that time. Again, a heifer that was brought to be used for sacrifice at the temple gave birth to a lamb in the midst of the temple. Around midnight during the feast, the eastern gate in Jerusalem. Now, this eastern gate, let me talk about this eastern gate. The eastern gate of the inner court of the temple, which was of brass, it was of brass armed with iron. It was heavy and had been with difficulty shut by 20 men. It took 20 men to open and close these temple doors. And they rested upon a basis armed with iron. They had bolts that fastened very deep in the firm floor, which was made of one entire stone. And according to Josephus, these doors of the gate, I said temple, the doors of this gate opened on its own accord about the 6th hour of the night. Now, what am I talking about? I'm talking about supernatural signs that happened in Israel and Jerusalem that dealt with the Temple Mount, that dealt with the temple itself, that dealt with the Eastern Gate. All these items, all these things are directly correlated with Bible prophecy. Jesus Christ will return on the Mount of Olives. He'll go through the Eastern Gate. The temple in Jerusalem will be significant. The Temple Mount, all these things. There was even signs in the heavens. There was a great comet that was shaped like a sword that was seen for a full year over Jerusalem. Now, here's what's interesting. There was even chariots and soldiers in armor seen running about in the clouds around the city. Again, these are from eyewitness accounts. Now, I want to go down here and I want to tell you something very interesting, and that is that there were watchmen in that day that were day and night sounding the alarm and warning the people that judgment was coming, and that all these supernatural events were not signs of great prosperity and blessing of God, but they were harbingers and omens of things to come. And consequently enough, we know in 70 AD, their worst fears were confirmed when the Roman Empire invaded Israel, invaded Jerusalem, invaded the temple, and destroyed it, and took many of the Jews captive. So here we have today, 2022, we're seeing these strange events take place again. We're seeing anomalies. We're seeing the chatter that's going around that the quote unquote Messiah is about to make his arrival in Jerusalem. He's about to reveal himself. He's quote unquote having conversations with prominent rabbis. And it looks as though, and it's going to take a couple years, maybe a year and a half, somewhere between a year and a half, 2 years. We're waiting on these red heifers. If they meet all the criteria, I believe that everything is then in place to construct this temple, Revelation 11. Now, you say, well, Brother Ricky, why is that interesting? Here's why. Because you can't have an Antichrist taking seat of authority in a temple unless you have a temple constructed. Are you getting it now? So listen, how close are we? Again, this is not short term today. We're talking about long term. Events that are stepping stones leading to the main event. Now, having said that, one of these rabbis referenced the war of Gog and Magog. Now, this is a real war. This is in Ezekiel chapter 38. This speaks of a coalition of nations that will come together in the latter days when Israel will be dwelling in safety without walls. That is not now. That is not today. That is future tense. But when you read the three of the major nations that will be involved, Iran, Turkey, and Russia. And consequently, who is forming a coalition as we speak? Iran, Russia, and don't think Turkey won't eventually be involved in this as well. But listen to this. Putin, here's an article. Ready? Putin is calling on Iranian army to help win the war in Ukraine. He warns that the West will see a, quote, catastrophic World War III if they continue to meddle in their affairs. According to the Daily Star, following missile strikes targeting Kyiv earlier this week, Russia may look to further escalate the conflict by recruiting Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Revolutionary Guard Corps affiliated personnel. The report says that Putin may have brought these armed forces to occupy areas in the Ukraine in order to train Russian troops to be able to use these killer drones, these Shahid 136 drones. The Ukrainian Resistance Center reported that Russian forces have brought an unspecified number of Iranian instructors into Crimea and other regions there in Ukraine. And again, the center believed the recruitment to occupied regions in Ukraine was indeed to teach Russian forces how to use these killer drones that will be used on civilian targets. And by the way, I saw a report on one of these mainstream media news outlets last night that these drones are now being used. So here you have Iran directly involved with Russia, who, again, both of these are going to be instrumental in coming together in the latter days that will invade Israel. Here's another article. Quote, former Russian President Medvedev Medvedev, however you pronounce his name. We're just going to call him Dmitry, because I will slaughter his name and I get tongue-tied and we'll never get through this broadcast. Former Russian President Dmitry on Monday warned Israel against sending weaponry to Ukraine. Watch this, saying it would destroy all diplomatic relations between Jerusalem and Russia. Wow. Quote, it seems Israel will supply weapons to the Kyiv regime, a very reckless move. Quote, it will destroy all diplomatic relations between our countries. This, again, Dmitry made this this warning. He did this on Telegram. He currently serves as the deputy chairman of the Security Council of Russia and is considered to be a key ally of Russian President Vladimir Putin. His comments came shortly after explosive-laden suicide drones, apparently including Iranian-made Shaheeds, that's what we just talked about a few minutes ago, struck Ukraine's capital earlier last week. At least one person was killed, and Ukrainian President Zelensky said last week that Russia is using these Iranian-made drones to target its civilians. Now, the former Russian president his warning was an apparent response to an Israeli minister who called on Sunday for Jerusalem to send military aid to Ukraine after reports that Iran was set to provide Moscow with ballistic missiles. So look at this, guys. Let's step back and take a broader look at this. Look at the nations all involved in conflict with one another that are key prophetic players in the end time. In Ezekiel 38:39, Gog, Magog war. Russia, Iran, and Israel. These three key players all involved, and there's threats going one to another. Russia aligning with Iran, Russia threatening Israel. Because listen, we got to get to a point, prophetically speaking, down the road. We have to get to a point, and this is where I want to end this broadcast today. This is what we get. So we see the short term, right? That's what we're showing you today. So what's the long term? What do we look for as students of prophecy, as watchmen, as those who study eschatology? Here's what we have to watch for. Somehow, and you've heard me say this over and over again, we have to get to point A and point B. Somehow, some way, we got to get from point A to point B. In order to see the fulfillment of Revelation 11, the book of Daniel, Thessalonians, to have an Antichrist set in the temple and declare himself as God, we have to have a temple constructed. We now see that progress is advancing, is accelerating, and thrusting us towards the fulfillment of that. And it could be within the next 2 years, maybe 3, depending on the delay of that. Again, it's my opinion that the only thing that I can perceive that we're waiting on is these red heifers to come to that age of maturity where they could be used for the sacrifice rituals. B, or the second part, is in order for Ezekiel 38:39 to be fulfilled, we have to get to a place where Israel has let down their guard, has their walled cities, or they're no longer dwelling in walled cities. Their gates and bars have come down, and the prophet said that this coalition of nations will come down in the latter days of Israel to a nation of people that will be dwelling in safety. All right. And then we have to get to something's got to happen in order to bring about the hooks, plural tense, to be put in the jaws of these nations to be brought down and work together with one intent, and that is to take the spoils of Israel. Again, we've covered this on other podcasts. What is that? Is it oil? Is it resources? Is it food? Is it water? What's going on? Weapons? We can only speculate. We see through a glass darkly. We see in part, we know in part. We don't fully know. We cannot be dogmatic about it. We can only speculate. But we do know that that's going to eventually happen. So it's my opinion, and I know everybody's got one, and you'll see them in the comments. You'll see them in the responses. I believe there's going to be either a war or series of wars that will take place in order for Israel to eventually capitulate and let their guard down. Now, I will say this, that the new prime minister of Israel has already, remember recently we talked about this, he went to the United Nations along with Biden, and they are coming to the table saying that Israel is ready for a two-state solution with the Palestinians to create a quote-unquote Palestinian state. Now, we know that in itself is dangerous because God gives specific warnings through his word and through his prophets that any nation that divides Israel, Zechariah warned about this and Joel warned about this, that they would enter into judgment on the account of, and I give you the quote, his people Israel and the dividing of Israel. And no doubt in my mind that judgment would come to all the nations that are involved. In fact, they will. Because we get all the way to the war of Armageddon, and he tells you there that in Joel chapter 3, that these nations will enter into war and they will be judged because of how they handled the nation of Israel, who God calls the apple of his eye. So we're living in perilous times, but we're living in exciting times. So we wanted to give you this report. Again, we are right now, present tense, seeing the short term and seeing the present tense of prophecy and how it is accelerating. But again, we got to get from point A to point B. And this is where we're at. We're watching, we're observing, and we're keeping our eye on these events and everything that are centered around the nation of Israel and around these nations and these coalitions these that will form in the last days and around Jerusalem and the Temple Mount. So, folks, buckle up because things are going to get very interesting. And it looks like in the next 3 years, things could really be taking off and picking up pace. So remember, I leave you with Luke 21:28. Jesus said, when you begin to see all these things coming to pass, look up, lift up your heads, for your redemption is drawing near. Listen, endtimeheadlines.org, endtimeheadlines.com. That's our main website. If you've not downloaded our free app, please do that today. It's available on both Apple and Android. Get it into your hands. Push yes to push notifications. You'll be notified of every headline and every podcast when it becomes readily available for you on a daily basis. We do at least minimum 3, sometimes 4 of these broadcasts a week. Every single day, we're bringing you headlines. So we want you to keep up. We want you to be informed. So get the app today. Listen, if this ministry is a source of blessing to you, it encourages you, equips you. Listen, we don't just do prophecy here. We preach the gospel. We equip believers. In fact, Thursday, not tomorrow, but Thursday, I've got a message that I'm going to do that's going to bring some clarification for some scripture or passages of scripture that's been taken out of context that we continually see. And we're going to bring some teaching and clarification to that. So be looking for that on Thursday. But listen, if this ministry is a source of blessing to you and you would like to know more about becoming a partner, you can do that two different ways. You can give electronically through the app. That's the easiest way. Or you can give by check or money order by making it out to End Time Headlines, P.O. Box 1391. That's Monroe, Georgia, and that's 30655. So we love you guys. God bless you. Thank you for taking the time to come on to the broadcast tonight. Listen, don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button, share this because that gets us out there to be seen and our content to be visible on social media. So until we see you guys on Thursday, may the Lord bless you, may keep you, and may his countenance shine upon you. God bless you. We'll see you then.
Thank you for listening to the End Time Headlines podcast. We pray that you've been blessed and equipped by today's message. For more information about how you can help partner with our ministry, please visit endtimeheadlines.org.